So this time I'll be doing the Local Haunts book tag. A Local Haunts is an anthology that contains short stories written by booktubers. I have not actually read this, but now that I know about it, I am very curious to read it. The tag was created by Dane Cobain over at Dane Reads. He is also an author, and I have one of his books, which I'm dying to read because it sounds really good. I was tagged by the Bookish Bryants, and the first, and I'll have both of their channels linked down in my description. The first prompt is Local Haunts. Tell us about a creepy or spooky place that's close to you. Well, we don't really have any spooky or creepy places to speak of here. But when the Bookish Bryants posted this tag on their channel, Becky and I had a little, sorry, my cat keeps hitting my tripod. He's shaking the camera. I hope that's not messing up the video too much. But anyways, Becky and I had a little brief discussion about how she believes in the supernatural, and I'm pretty skeptical of it. However, I do have one spooky potential ghost story, but I don't really think it's a ghost story, but you never know. And I promised her in the comments that I would tell that story. So when I was in the second grade, I lived in an extremely small town. It just has a few hundred people, and I didn't live there very long. But while I was there, I made this friend who lived right on the edge of town. It was only a couple blocks away from where I was living, and she lived on a farm. There were just nothing but fields behind their house, and her dad was a farmer. And I used to go over there and play a lot. And one day, I had just played with her, maybe 2 to 3 days beforehand, and I had gone over there to play with her. And when I got there, the entire farm was deserted. I mean, everything was gone. The house was empty. I looked in the window, there was nothing in the house. All of their farm equipment was gone. Their big sheds and barns with equipment, like big equipment, like combines and things like that, all of these things were gone. And I just couldn't understand what I mean, just in a few days, like everything was gone. And it just looked sort of neglected, like a lot of the yard was overgrown and the bushes were overgrown and stuff. And I don't know if it was like that before. I couldn't really remember, but it just seemed like perhaps it wasn't. And I was going to do some more looking around, but right as I had made the decision to continue looking around, a bat flew right by my head and screeched really loud, and it just scared me to death. And so I just took off running. And I thought that maybe it was like a ghost situation at the time. But, you know, of course, when you're a child, you have an overactive imagination. So I'm sure it was just coincidence. However, it did seem odd to me looking back that they could have moved all that stuff in just a few days. That's a lot to move out in just a few days. But of course, I could be wrong. It might have been longer than that. In my memory, it was only a few days. I don't really know for sure. So that's my potential ghost story. The next prompt is a stone's throw. Tell us about a story with a young female character who has a tough life. That for me is The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. I really enjoyed this book, and the main character's name is Hal, and she has had this really sad life, and things were just kind of tough for her, and I thought she was a very relatable character, and I got sniffled up reading her story even. So this is the book I chose for that prompt. The next one is Crowthorne. Tell us about a story with a harmful friendship. Well, I'm not sure if we were supposed to stick to horror stories or not, but I couldn't think of a good one to talk about. Like I said, I haven't been reading horror except for maybe a year. Actually, I don't think I said that in this video, but I've said it in past videos. I've only been exploring horror for a little over a year now. I have read limited horror novels. So instead of a horror novel, I chose Othello by Shakespeare. This is my little baby copy that my mom got me, these little baby copies of Shakespeare books. I think they're really cute. Because that, I mean, it doesn't get much more horrible than the friendships in Othello. Everybody's betraying everyone else. Let's see. Number 4, Screen 8. Tell us about a movie that scares you and that's based on a true story. So for me, that is the movie I Know My First Name is Stephen. It came out in 1989. It was a made-for-television movie. And it's a story about Stephen Stainer, who was, as a young child, he was kidnapped by a pedophile. And the pedophile told him that his parents didn't want him anymore, that they didn't want him, and that he was adopting Stephen. Of course, he suffered sexual abuse and all kinds of awful things. And then when Stephen was, I believe he was 16 years old, the man brought home another small child named Timmy. And the boy realized at that point that the man had probably kidnapped Timmy, figured out that he had kidnapped Timmy, and thought, you know what, he had probably been kidnapped too. So this kind of all came together for him. And so he took Timmy and he went to the police. Timmy was returned to his family and Stephen was returned to his. And Stephen Stainer did grow into adulthood, but he died pretty young. I think he was right around 30 something when he died in a motorcycle accident. But yeah, he had a rough go. And I have a son. And when my son was little, all I could think about was that movie. Somebody doing that to my son. And so I used to drill him. We used to like practice, like I would pretend to be the stranger trying to kidnap him and he would practice fighting me off. So I didn't ever want that to happen to my son, but it didn't horrify me at the time, but it horrified me after I had a child. The next one is The Blocked Cellar. Tell us about your favorite horror, paranormal, or true crime YouTube channel. Well, I do really, really enjoy true crime, and I watch several of those. My very favorite is That Chapter. The host is named Mike, and he has I'm so sorry to say that I'm not sure about the accent. I think it might be Irish. I don't think it's Scottish. I think it's Irish. And so I love his accent, and I love the way he tells these true crime stories, and he's extremely thorough. Like, he gets really good footage, really good pictures, and he lays it out so very nicely. I just really enjoy his channel. It's my very favorite one, and if you enjoy true crime and you haven't seen him, I really highly suggest you give him a try. That chapter. The next one is The Night Watchman. Tell us about a story that's set partly at night. I chose a short story called Old Order by Jonathan Janz. It's only 42 pages long. It is about a man who shows up at a farm to do work, but he has his purposes. He does not have good intentions on the farm. And the last part of the book and the climax of the book takes place at night. And of course, it's a short story, so I can't really tell you anything more if you want to read it. But let's just say that did not turn out in any way the way the man thought it would turn out. And I definitely recommend you read that short story if you are interested in horror that is more on the dark and twisted side. Let's see. The next prompt is Alone Along the Gum Trees. Tell us about a story that takes place in the wilderness. For that, I chose Wilder Girls by Rory Powers. This is a young adult horror novel. I don't generally like YA fiction. There are, of course, always exceptions. This was one of them. I really enjoyed this story. It's about some girls in a girls' school that is on an island, and the island is covered with a lot of trees and like wilderness, and there's a lot of wild animals and things. And they're on lockdown in this school because they have all contracted some kind of virus that mutates them in strange ways and then ends up killing them. And so yeah, I really enjoyed this. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you might want to pick that up. Let's see, the next prompt is Highway to Hell. Tell us about a story that involves music. Well, hands down, I went with a Grady Hendrix book called We Sold Our Souls. This is a fictional, the making of a fictional heavy metal legend. And this book was incredible. I absolutely loved it. It was so good. It was so good. And it was a little different. The supernatural elements were different than anything I've read before. I thought this book, and of course Grady Hendrix is very clever. He's a very clever writer, or at least these last few books I've read. Let's see, this one and My Best Friend's Exorcism and Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires were all really clever, and really enjoyed his writing. So yeah, definitely. This was the book I picked for that. Let's see. Okay, at the end of the rope, tag some BookTube and HorrorTube friends, which I'm not going to do any tags because this is an older tag. And I'm not sure who has done this and who hasn't. I suspect a lot of booktubers that I know probably have already done this. So if you haven't done it, I would definitely be interested in seeing what your answers are for this. So just consider yourself tagged.